Welcome back to the Gun Bench. Today we're going to be taking a look at a Parker. So this is probably the most iconic of the American vintage side-by-sides. The Parker gun, whole reliable, is something that if you don't know much about shotguns, you've probably, at least if you're in the double barrel world, heard of Parker, seen Parkers, looked at the prices and been like, oh my goodness, why do these command such a premium? I haven't done a video on Parkers for a couple of reasons. Mainly, though, because I don't feel that comfortable talking about them compared to other guns because there is such a wealth of knowledge about them already to be found. There are guys who know so much about these. I don't claim to know all that much. I know enough to get me in trouble. That's about it. But in any case, I just did a pattern test with this. I was testing out some duck loads, some Salt Creek custom ammo. I ran it through this. I also ran through some of my own personal number sixes just to do a little bit of range and pattern testing before the upcoming hunting season. I had to clean the gun. It's on the bench. So I was like, you know what the heck? We'll take a look at a Parker. So this Parker in particular, it is a 10 gauge. It has 30-inch barrels. It is an E grade, EH to be specific. So when we say H, just means it's hammerless. So no hammers on this guy. So whenever you see a Parker and it's a grade with an H after it, just means it's hammerless. So we see here, screws are in pretty good alignment. There's still a decent amount of case color on the gun. Some traces here and there. Decent engraving on it. Bolsters are engraved. We have our doll's head extension. Our Damascus barrels. Parker Brothers. Meriden, Connecticut, Damascus steel. So these Damascus barrels are in pretty good shape. Still very vivid. Look good all the way down. But yeah, we take a look at this gun. We see the recessed pin, the giveaway that this gun's a Parker. Only a few other American makers did this, and only for a short while. We see that this gun was also pinned. It's very flushed, professional pin there. Looks pretty good. I don't know why this was done. I don't know if the gun cracked at some point in its history, or if it's done as just a preventative measure. But go underneath. Engraving still very, very nice. You can see some of the case color there. Screws in good alignment. We flip her around. We'll see the gaudy ducks. Yeah, for whatever reason, Parker ducks, they kind of look cartoonish to me. Take a look at those guys. I mean, I could never engrave something like that, but still, compared to like some of my Lefevres and things, the engraving is a little more cartoonish to me. But in any case, this Parker was made in 1889, so I have the factory research level letter on it. So Parker started making hammerless shotguns in 1888. The gun company existed far before that, so they started making guns back during the Civil War. However, they got into really the shotgun world, and they kind of stayed there. They got out of the rifle world after the war. So we have hammer guns. We have another type of gun. It has a lifter mechanism at the bottom. I may show you one of those eventually. I've got one up in the safe. But in 1888, they started making hammerless shotguns with a top lever release. So in the 1880s, the late 1880s, hammerless guns really started to take over the market. So it was funny. I had this out the range with a Remington 1889, which was a hammer gun, and it was made in 1890. So they were still making hammer guns in the late 1880s, 1890s, all the way through 1900. The hammerless guns really started to take over the market, though, in the late 1880s, and then pushing onwards until they really just decimated the market by 1900. Baker came out with a hammer gun after 1900, which I've got one of those upstairs too in a safe. I'll pull it out at some point. But really, it was really the hammerless gun that was going to shine after about 1890. But this gun is interesting in that it was ordered in April of 1889. It was shipped in June. Now, this gun, it's a 10 gauge, was one of the first hammerless shotguns that Parker ever made, which I think is pretty cool. I love 10 gauges, and this is one of the first hammerless ones they ever made. So it's also interesting that it's pretty light. So this gun it's made on a 12 gauge frame, a number 2 frame. So if you have a Parker, there's infinite possibilities of how the gun was set up. So they have guns ranging from 8 gauge all the way to 410, everything in between. They have different frame sizes, different styles of grips. They had all different kinds of options, and they made a lot of guns. So you can really find just about anything made by Parker. Now, I got lucky with this gun in that I wasn't looking for it. I was bidding against a guy on Gunbroker for another 10 gauge. He and I ended up meeting. I spent too much on the gun. I did win it. It's one of my other Parker 10s. It's the one I actually use for most of my hunting. But he and I met afterwards at a side-by-side shoot, and he actually ended up offering me this gun for sale when he was ready to part with it. So this gun's in pretty decent condition. It's a 10 gauge on a number 2 frame. Now, the way I know that, if we take our forearm off, take our barrels off here. Now, this is one thing that really annoys me with Parkers. You can't see me behind the camera. But sometimes they have an extra hook here. Sometimes they get a little stuck when you're taking the barrels off. But this here, if you have a Parker, there'll be a stamp here which will tell you the frame size. So this gun is a number 2 frame. It's a 10 gauge. Most 10 gauges are number 3s, that it's the heavy frame. But this one is on a 2 frame, so it's a little bit lighter, which makes the gun a little more pleasant to shoot. Swings a little better. You get a little less fatigue carrying it. I actually use this gun mostly for dove hunting so far. I plan on taking it out for ducks this year. I also plan on taking it out last year and the year before. But whenever I would pull this thing out of the safe, it would be a day where we'd have bad weather. And I really don't want to beat this gun too much. So the other Parker Remingtons took its place. But I just want to take a quick look at these Parkers. They're pretty easy to identify, especially by the 3 screws here and the recess hinge pin. So this is one of mine. It's a 10 gauge. It's still in pretty decent shape. Parker is just, it's the quintessential American vintage shotgun. You had all kinds of celebrities with these in the early days. They even had a reproduction made by Remington not too long ago where you can actually get like a very modern Parker where you can shoot more modern ammo out of it. I enjoy this gun. It's a light Parker. It's a Parker that will probably be staying in my collection for a very long time. It's something that I enjoy to shoot because it's light. It only has those 30-inch barrels. It has slightly more open chokes than a lot of my other 10 gauges. So it can be a pretty versatile gun. But I thought I'd take a look at this because I have to clean it anyways. Again, I'm not going to go into a huge history on Parker. There's a lot of those on the internet already. I will say this, though. It is an E grade. I mentioned that. I've never really gone over the Parker grading system. Parkers go, well, there's Invincible. There's only a few of those made. But typically, the beginning of the alphabet, they start at A and work their way through B, C, D, E. I don't think there's any Fs. Then it goes G. Then you'll have P and N. And then you'll jump all the way to V, Vulcan, which is just the steel type. Then you go to the Trojan, which is the lowest or the working man Parker. Now, all those Parkers are the same except for really the Trojan. They have a different mechanism here. They don't actually have a doll's head extension. They lock differently. But most of the Parkers are the same when you get into the hammerless guns, where they'll have slight variations, a bunch of different options, but they'll be fairly similar internally, aside from maybe the type of wood that you have, types of barrels that you have, and the engraving you have. But again, A being the highest, working your way down the alphabet. So this is an E, so it's like right in the middle, like the farther middle. D's are really considered pretty nice. But this is my Parker E, EH, hammerless, and it was made in 1889. So it's a pretty old 10 gauge, but it's still being used. I still enjoy it a lot, and I'll be getting it out this season quite a bit, hopefully. Maybe even for the dove opener. We'll see. In any case, until next time, keep those old guns alive.